All right. Hey, everyone. Just as people are joining, we'll go ahead and welcome you guys to the webinar today on exploring the value of beta testers through product development and beyond. I'm Brianna, CenterCode's content marketing generalist and your moderator for today. Thanks for joining us. So to start, I'd like to just cover some housekeeping items. The webinar will be recorded as usual, and we'll make sure that that's sent out to all of you guys by within the next day or so. You can keep an eye out for that. And as we go on, as Chris is speaking through the presentation, please submit your questions through the Q&A, and we'll be sure to address those at the end of the session. Also, before we get started here, I just wanted to let you guys know that we did just launch a new ebook, The Hidden Value of Beta Testers. So as you see on the screen here, we'll send the link out to all of you guys, but we are pretty excited about this. It does go along with the same topic that we're kind of talking about today during the webinar. So the guide really explains the value that testers bring to your organization, not only during product development, which is a lot of the known value, but after as well. And many times companies see that value before, but you don't always recognize the extension of their value that they can have on the feedback and also the reviews of your products afterward. So just a brief introduction before I pass over the mic to Chris on CenterCode. For those not familiar with us, we offer solutions for a variety of use cases that you can see here on the screen. And the first one we'll kind of talk about is we help companies bring their product to market by engaging their target market. Traditionally, you can see that as beta tests, here it is user acceptance tests or field tests. We also offer solutions for product growth. So this means recruiting customers to identify solutions and enhancements with continuous software updates. So you'll see there progressive delivery, early access, or sometimes heard as advisory boards. Next is customer zero. In other words, your employees. So by gathering their feedback early, you'll be able to establish a product culture within your company. This one's known as alpha tests. Those are usually pretty familiar, dog fooding and employee tests. And then lastly, competitive edge, where we can tap into your competitors' customers to gain feedback on their products, also known there as competitive intelligence, market testing, or comparative research. So those are our solutions. With all that said, I'd like to now hand it over to Chris, VP of Marketing at CenterCode. Thanks for being here, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Bri. I totally appreciate the introduction. For those of you that don't know, I've been in beta testing for a long time. So if you've ever seen one of our webinars, you've probably seen me along the way. I've been recently promoted to the VP of Marketing, so I'm kind of taking in this new position, sharing kind of my insights with everybody. I'm totally enjoying it. If you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to me through my email, chris@centercode.com. Pretty simple. You can also reach out on LinkedIn. I love interacting with people. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. But in lines with what we're talking about today, I just have a quick agenda that I'd like to share. It's really simple. There's some depth to some of these things, mainly that best practices section. But really, I'm going to start off with like an introduction, just like kind of a context set of what beta testing is, because everyone has slightly different names for it. There's a lot of fragmentation in what we'd call our industry. Some people call it field tests, beta tests, alpha tests, friendly user trials. There's probably, I think we did research, it was like over 60 names that we saw for what people would call something like a beta test. So we'll set some context there. We'll go into what the role of beta testers are in product development and talking about some of the value that they bring, not only to product development, but to your launch and the future success of your product. And then we're going to cover some best practices on finding and working with beta testers to ensure that you can maximize the value that you get from them. In that ebook that Bri was talking about, is a really fun ebook. We have a section in there that's actually from industry experts that are giving you tips from their experiences. So we got a handful of tips to share inside that ebook. So check out centercode.com. You can go to the resources section and download that. Also, if you want to wait for this webinar to come out to you, you'll get the presentation. You can click on the links within that and access it. It's not a very long ebook, but it's got some great graphics. I'm going to share some of those today. And then we're going to end it with a Q&A session. So if you have questions that you'd like to share, we had an internal webinar where we talked with our team at Center Code just about this. We present all of our webinars to our internal team to let them know what's going on and what we're talking about. We had a great back and forth with a lot of people that run tests for other companies. So it was a good conversation. So let's hop into this brief introduction. And I want to start off with what is beta testing? And I have this fun little metaphor, and we have a nice little graphic that goes along with it. And it's ultimately thinking of it like diving into the depths of the ocean. And what you're looking for is hidden treasure. So not all the times when you're diving, you're looking for hidden treasure, but you're looking for something. In this sense, we're looking for treasure. And that treasure is uncovering those flaws and improvements for your product. And that's going to help you make that product better for launch. So what you're doing with beta testing is getting a group of people that are ultimately part of your target market or representative of your target audience, and you're collecting feedback about what's working and what's not working in the product. So we have this nice little skill diver example of navigating these waters and helping launch your successful launch, or have a successful product launch with beta testing in mind. So that's kind of a quick level set of what I mean by beta testing. It's early development, so pre-launch product, or maybe it's pre-release if you are just pushing out a new update. It's your target audience testing it. So this could be customers, it could be employees that look like customers, if you want to go down that rabbit hole. But it's ultimately people that are part of your target market, and they're giving you feedback about what's working and what's not. All right, so we'll hop into just that example of what a beta tester is, and we have a nice little example here of our diver. The beta tester is, like I mentioned, a member of that target market, helping you identify what's working, what's not. But there are a lot of different types of beta testers, kind of what I was alluding to earlier. This idea that there are internal beta testers. So those are your employees. So you can grab someone from your support team or marketing team, HR team that kind of look like your target audience, or maybe they are part of your target audience because they buy or use your product even outside of work. So we have external testers, which would be like your customer base or people that just aren't inside the company. You have paid testers. You have volunteer testers. So those are not necessarily paid directly. You have alpha testers, which are probably a little more technical. You have good and bad testers. And this is not so much as an exhaustive list, but just giving you like kind of a range or breadth of what could be considered beta testers. So when we're talking about our beta testers in this specific context, we're referring to typically volunteers and external when we're talking in this slide deck here. So we'll carry on with our underwater theme. In that ebook that we're talking about, we have this great little image that's kind of talking about the anatomy of a great beta tester. So here's all the different components or traits that you could see in a great beta tester. Someone that's collaborative. They're willing to work with not only your company, but they're willing to work with other testers. They're working together to help you all build a better product. They're rational. They can think well. They can think through problems. They're responsive. So they're giving you feedback and responding to questions that you have. They're enthusiastic. They're really excited about getting the product out the door. They're really excited about giving you feedback, about participating with you. Passionate. Their interest is truly in building a better product and working with your brand. So I'm not going to read all of these, but these are all the different traits that you would look for in a great beta tester. There's a lot of different ways to kind of understand when you do have great testers or how to recruit for testers. We'll talk about some of those in the tips, but a few that I just want to kind of rattle off for everybody. Screening. So if you do have a screener survey, there's a lot of questions that you could ask that could give you this information so you can kind of hone in on what would be essentially finding great testers. One question we were just talking about it. We shot our podcast for December yesterday. So that'll be coming up in a couple of weeks, but we talked to a CEO of a company, I think it's called Talia, but his name is Javad. He's been a long time customer, has been at a lot of different companies like Google and Nest, which is, part of Google now. But before that, he was part of that. He's worked for a lot of smart home, smart lighting places. But we brought up this question, and he brought it up, and I love it. when you ask your screener question or screener survey, one really good question to ask is why you would be a good fit for testing, and leave that as an open-ended question. That open-ended response could be extremely valuable in identifying a lot of these characteristics. So when you ask that question, they give you a sentence or two, or maybe a paragraph. Hopefully they're giving you a little bit more. I'd say limit the number of open-ended questions you have so you can get some more depth in this. But when you read through those responses, you can see whether or not they're going to be enthusiastic, whether or not they're passionate about it. You can see whether or not they're motivated and curious. And you can kind of tell whether or not they're going to be a little rational. Can't necessarily tell at that point if they're going to be collaborative or responsive because you haven't really asked them any follow-up questions, but you can kind of tell those things later on in the recruitment process, like whether or not you send an acceptance mail and how quickly they respond to you. That could be an indicator of responsiveness. So I want to leave that little tiny tip in here in this section before we go into the components of what kind of value these testers bring. But this is what I'd say is like a good tester. They're doing these things, but not only are they this type of person or they have these traits, but we have them providing value to the organization. So I'll just say value can be subjective. Every organization is going to identify value a little bit differently. Some value could be just using the product or downloading the new version of the product and using it. And that's value. Some, it could be providing feedback on a regular basis, or giving follow-up responses on feedback to verify fixes have happened. So value comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes. But one thing that I wanted to bring up is that there is more value to beta testers than meets the eyes. The theme of this content piece that we just released was really about the value you think of beta testers is typically just the tip of the iceberg. They actually provide a lot more value to your company, to your organization, than kind of meets the eye. So we have this idea of beta testers providing value during product development and then beyond product development, so after that product launch. So we have this nice little graphic that we've built. It's got a lot of fun, creative components to it. You can see these little penguins hanging out on the top of the iceberg. And definitely turtles aren't often swimming around icebergs for those, even though, but there's some hidden inside jokes to some of these graphics that we've put in here. But what you're looking at here is this iceberg of beta tester value. So the top of the iceberg, I'd say you consider all the things that testers are doing during product development. Now, not all testers are doing all of these things. You're not getting all this value from every tester. Probably a small percentage of them are actually providing, I'd say, most of this value here. I'm going to move my image a little bit. But like I talked about before, just downloading and using the product is kind of like just that really top layer, providing feedback like for things like issues or improvements or feature requests they want to see, telling you what's working and giving you help on prioritizing that feedback of how important these things are. They're voting on other things. They're collaborating with other testers. There's a few. I'll tell the story. I just told this in the podcast. So sorry if you're going to listen to both. But I have examples from some other companies where they actually have their testers, their best testers, actually interact with a lot of the other testers to help them resolve issues that they have, find workarounds, provide the details for that a company would need to be able to make action or take action on the feedback. So if you can imagine, a tester submits feedback of like, hey, this thing isn't working, this feature is not working. And some great testers go out of their way to look at this piece of feedback and say, hey, could you provide a little more context? Like, I'm not seeing that feature is working on my end. Could you try doing this? Could you try doing that? Can you give this feedback? So a lot of times they're helpful. And, this is, I don't want to say it's like a double-edged sword, but you got to be a little cautious of this because you don't want testers to not necessarily influence a lot of what other testers are doing or seeing. But with some guidelines set up for those great testers, they can provide a wealth of support during your project and get better engagement and kind of be that first layer of support for a lot of these testers, especially at scale. So I know there's a lot of companies like Waze that have this first line of defense, which is like their primo supreme beta testers that interact with like the much larger customer base. And it's just extremely valuable, and it's so it's great when I think about it because there's so much passion and drive to beta testing. Like, they're not paying those top testers to to do that stuff. They're just so engaged with the company. They don't work for the company. They're engaged with the company. They're invested in the brand, and they're willing to go out of their way to assist not only the people that are also on the beta test, but they're providing that feedback so it could be impactful to the larger population that are going to be ultimately using this. Like I mentioned earlier, they can help you validate or validate any fixes or improvements that come out. So if you implement a new feature that is in response to some of their feedback, or improve something like enhance some performance or fix a bug, asking these testers to respond, they're pretty great at saying, hey, this is fixed, or no, this doesn't look like it's fixed on my end, and you can get that feedback back to your development team or your UX team or whatever the feedback is related to. And then we have this nice little waterline, and everything below that I'm considering beyond product development. So after launch, and this is not something you typically think when you think beta testers. You think of just sticking inside the product development lifecycle. Or sorry, it's the whole product development, but sticking in product development. So this bottom half are things like they're more likely to leave this is the value of good beta testers. They're more likely to leave reviews and ratings about the product. There's some caveats about of giving people products and having them review them after the fact. But these people are also more likely to buy the products that they're testing, depending on what kind of product it is, or they're more likely to buy other products from that brand because they're so invested in it. They're the people that are more willing to answer things like Q&A on places like Amazon, or on Capterra and G2 for you B2B folks or software folks, or inside mobile apps. They're more likely to give those ratings, those reviews, those feedback, the frequently asked questions, or those question and answers on websites or on the mobile app stores. They're more willing to produce user-generated content, so they're more likely to go out of their way to kind of promote this product because they are invested. They're going to be more likely to recommend the product to friends and family. I don't know how many times I've recommended families, my family or friends, products that I've tested after the fact that's been released. Like we're not supposed to talk about these products while we're testing them directly, but after the fact, saying, yeah, they fixed all this great stuff, or it works really well. One of the cool components to that is those great testers actually become almost like a layer of support too. So when you recommend those products, those people kind of look out to you to say, hey, you recommend this product and I'm running into this issue, and you may know a workaround if you're, a tester that was on that test, or a way to work with it to make it work the way that it should be working. They're more likely to purchase those products from the same brand. They're more likely to become evangelists for your product. And that's where we actually started this piece of content from. We sat down with a little committee that comes up with our ideas for content, and someone threw out the idea of brand evangelists. Like, oh, let's talk about brand evangelists. Like, it's such an interesting topic. And testers becoming brand evangelists, right? It's the upgrade of okay, you're a beta tester, you become a customer, and then the brand evangelist is someone that's kind of tooting the horn of the company and out there kind of evangelizing the product. And I saw it as an opportunity to say, well, there's a lot more than just the brand evangelist component. There's like a wealth of value that they're providing. And I kind of said oh, the brand evangelist is like the tip of the iceberg. It's actually the bottom of the iceberg in this context. But this example is showing off this variety of value that testers bring. So when you're pitching this to your colleagues or stakeholders or executives, when you think about the investment that you're making to some of these beta testers, if you're giving them swag, or if you're giving them merchandise, you're giving them coupons or discounts or the product or gift cards or anything like that, and you're incentivizing it, or you're trying to justify the cost of a beta test, the concept of this is that the value isn't just early on in development. It goes far beyond that to the aspects of launch. For example, they fix bugs early on. Fixing bugs early on is going to save money in fixing them later, but it also has a lasting impact on the success of the sales part or the marketing part of the product. So when you're thinking about talking about the value of beta testers or beta testing, try to extend it outside of the realm of just simply product development. Inside the ebook that we have out right now, there's some great tips about how to communicate this value to other people. So look out for those if you download the ebook. So I'm going to cover a couple of the tips that are in there, and I'm going to put my own little spin on it because these tips were not from me, but I see the value, and I feel like I can talk about it because I do have experience in the industry. The first one is leveraging resources that kind of talk with your audience or the target market. So if you're looking for great beta testers, if you're looking for people that you want to provide value in your testing, leveraging teams that you have that are close to you. For example, one of my favorite examples is talking to my event marketing team. So when I worked for Western Digital before coming here, I would always go talk to our event team. One, they always had swag, which was super fun because they'd be willing to share swag that they got, and I love getting swag out to the beta testers. But when they'd go to events, I'd give them opportunities for things like, I'd say, hey, can you bring this card? And it's just like a QR code for them to scan this QR code and sign up for the beta program. So people that were going to the trade shows were a little more invested in the brand. That came up to the section. They're probably looking for some free stuff, but they're invested in the brand, and they're looking for kind of what's going on with the brand. So they're interested in it. And I saw it as an opportunity to find people that would be also interested in testing the products and providing feedback and shaping that for other people. So this is, if you're looking for testers, look internally, your support teams, your marketing teams. I'd say shy away from some sales teams. Sometimes your account managers, if you're a B2B or software company, can be pretty helpful in identifying like key accounts that are really helpful or really responsive. Those would make great beta testers, but I wouldn't recommend using your beta as a like sales tool. Like don't open that can of worms. It might get capitalized on a little bit too much and not necessarily give you a lot of great results. But leverage those internal teams to find or get some more great beta testers. The second one that we're bringing up are referrals. This one's really nice. We have some great stories. When we did our internal webinar, and I've probably told the story like 1,000 times, I had he's a product director now, but at the time of this story, he was running our beta bound community, which is going to be one of our other tips. But he tells this story of he was doing this recruitment for a company, and it was really niche, right? It was a really niche market they're going after. It was a new product. What he had done to get to the numbers that he needed for this niche market is he put out the screener survey. He got some responses. This company was looking for Canadians, so it was exclusive to Canada. It was a workout shirt that actually that did some tracking on it, but they only developed this workout shirt in a men's small. So they had to find Canadian men that were small, that wore a small shirt. They needed a workout frequency to be pretty high. So they needed between I think it said 3 to 5 times a week. So small men who worked out frequently in Canada. It had only been developed, I believe it was either for iOS or Android only, so they could only find those specific people. So it was small men in Canada that worked out frequently that had only an iOS or Android device. I can't remember which one that was specifically, but it was like a super niche market. And he put out the screener, he got the responses, and he found a handful of them. And rather than just keep pushing out to try to get more from like this huge group or this big database of people that were living in Canada, he was able to ask for referrals. So he reached out to these people, the small group that he got. He asked for referrals from these people, saying, hey, could you refer your friends? And it was more likely that these people were friends with people that were a little more similar to them. So they actually were able to get to the recruitment number by asking for those referrals. And referrals is a great way to get people that are like the people that you want. So if you want great beta testers and you have some great beta testers, it'd be very useful or effective to be able to reach out to them and give some guidelines of what you're looking for and have them recommend people that are similar to them. So this is one of my favorite tips of all time for being able to extend the network that you have. So if you only have 1,000 people in your community or 10,000 people and you're looking for a small group of people, reach out to them, have them become your little ambassadors, and have them reach out to their network of people that are also similar. So give that a whirl. That should get you some great results. Third one, hard pressed for this one, but reach out to CenterCode's premium panel of testers. So you can check out betabound.com. You can reach out to CenterCode and ask for a demo. We can explain to you how all this stuff works. You can post opportunities and at betabound.com as well. But that panel is kind of like very groomed. It's the people that are actively interested in beta testing. They don't fill out a wealth of surveys, so they're not like that, kind of crappy panel of 1 million plus people that only do surveys and they're just looking for a quick payout of 50 cents to fill out a 10-question survey. These people are interested in investing their time into brands. They get kind of trained on what it means to be a good beta tester. We have guidelines for what it takes to become a tester. We inside this, we actually have scoring elements, so we know what testers have done or have experienced testing before and are more likely to be more engaged and kind of be in that realm of great testers. So try that out and see if it works for you. The fourth one is when you do have great testers, and this is more on the how to manage great testers, it's very important to engage with them. You want to keep their momentum going, because one of the worst things you can do is have a great tester burn out and or not feel heard, and then just watch that kind of flutter away where they become not great testers, or worse, they become negative testers and they don't enjoy the experience anymore and they actively push against the community. Most beta test programs, or most beta tests, actually suffer from participation drop off over an extended period of time. So, after 3-4 weeks, you start to see this kind of taper off of how much feedback's coming through. It's important to respond to the feedback. It's important to engage with these people. It's important to, you don't actually, in a lot of cases, you don't have control of what things you're fixing or implementing. You should try to get some fixes in, and hopefully these testers see the things that you fix and are engaging, so they know that their feedback is not only being heard, but it's being resolved. There's no greater joy, I imagine, for a beta tester that gets the thing that they found fixed. But you want to make sure that you kind of keep up on this. This is key. I'm going to talk about some caveats in a second, but you need to make sure that they are being heard throughout your project, or they will turn into not a bad tester, but not maintain or continue to be a great tester. So keep encouragement up during when they submit feedback. Thank them for their time. You can do that regularly. It's free to thank them, right? It may take you 5-10 minutes to craft an email and get it off to people, or you can have something like CenterCode that can recognize people for doing great. And as they move on, make sure you're wrapping up your project closure with a thank you so much, and here's the things we're able to address, and give them just affirmation about the things that they've done and the impact that they've had. That's a great way to keep people motivated for the next project that they come through, or recommend the beta program to other people that are like them. Yeah, they're very responsive. They're great. It's a great brand to invest in. They're super cool, and I love working with them. That's the stories you want to be able to get out of your programs. We'll talk about the idea of word of mouth, right? There's word of mouth in product development. There's word of mouth outside of product development. There's word of mouth to sell the product, about joining the beta program. This is all kind of pending. Your project experience is great, and that your product experience is going to be great. The fifth one is kind of in line with this. This one I think was supposed to be about maintaining their momentum throughout. This one's about showing that appreciation, getting through, making sure that they know that their feedback is being addressed. And I kind of cover that, so I'll kind of just graze through this real quickly. Now I talked just a little bit ago about these caveats. If you do not have a great project experience, you can't imagine you're going to be getting that value, that the iceberg of value. I can't imagine you're going to see a lot of great value beyond your launch, or even during development, if you don't have a great experience. If you just push out your release and you collect feedback, but you don't actually respond to it, or you don't give any you don't give any sense of you're listening or anything out there, you're not giving any feelers for that, they're not going to be receptive to the program. They're not going to want to participate in the next one. They're not going to want to necessarily care about your product too much. And same goes for your product. If you're getting all that feedback and maybe it's a great project experience, but the product never got or never saw any of those improvements, or there's no plan or no future updates that got that's going to be real rough for your testers, saying like, oh, they, I submitted this, 6 months ago or a year ago, and they still haven't got to this, and it's a major issue for me. Like I can't even use the product with it. Not saying that you need to fix all the issues, but this is kind of like you need to be able to show your work along the way. Why we did the beta test, what the beta test was able to achieve during this time. It was going to be really helpful to making sure that people see that you are making changes. And I do recommend having iterative tests. So when you do a beta 1 or a beta 2 or a beta 3, that there's changes being made. And that there's changes being made during the product development timeframe. So some bugs get fixed. Not everything gets fixed, but some things do get fixed. You want to be able to kind of show the work through that. This third line is a lot of the value. I would say I guess some portion of it can't be forced. It needs to come naturally. So I don't recommend you reaching out to your testers and saying, hey, go provide product reviews. It's going to come off as very fake. Amazon doesn't necessarily enjoy when people that receive free products leave reviews. A lot of time it gets kind of obfuscated or ignored. You can kind of sniff. Talked about in the podcast a little bit, but you kind of sniff out when reviews are fake or kind of lame. When someone is genuinely interested or invested in the product and excited about it, and they can point out all these great things that are happening with it, it's far more believable. So a lot of that value needs to kind of happen naturally. And having a great project experience and a great product experience are going to be the ways that you can kind of increase the scale at which that stuff happens naturally. The other thing I want to kind of point out here is word of mouth is very dependent on scale. So when I talk about your product being recommended by your great beta testers, those brand evangelists, if you work at a B2B company and you don't have a lot of customers that they can recommend to, it may be like 1 or 2 people. And that's pretty huge. Like if you get 1 to 2 businesses, that could be pretty big. If we're talking about like a connected product or anything like that, it could be, a dozen people, and those dozen people could have, 1 to 2 people that they are recommending the product to. So there's a lot of ways for this to scale differently, but it's very dependent on your company. It's dependent on your market. So when I say things like they're more likely to leave reviews or buy more of your products or recommend your products to other people, just kind of take it with a grain of salt. It very much depends on a few components like your company and your market. So recap, we talked about with a quick introduction of beta testing and the different type of beta testers. We talked about the role that beta testers play in product development. We talked about the value that testers bring not only to development, but beyond product development. And there's, I think there's 5 tips for finding and working with those testers. So if you want some more, please download this other this content that we have coming out. It's great. It was super fun working with our designer and content writers for these things, but it covers things like the anatomy of great beta testers. It has things like the iceberg of value for beta testers, and it's got those industry experts tips. So it's got people from other companies, B2B and connected products, and all kinds of different companies that are providing you with real actionable tips about their experiences. So it's not just coming from people at Center Code; it's coming from people that are customers that do the stuff for a living. I think I should be handing this to Bree. We'll just cover this stuff. If you do want to see a demo of how Center Code could help you with those things, just centercode.com/demo or hit centercode.com. There's a demo up in the right-hand corner. Click on that. You can get a lot of information. You can meet with one of our team members for 30 minutes. They'll show you the product. They'll learn about a couple of things. They can really tune their demos to you. And check out our resources. We have a lot of resources. My focus for the rest of this year and next year is about getting information out to all you people. We want to share those best practices, those standards, those tips, those just our experience. I want to be able to talk about that with everybody and give you guys information that you could use. You're here because you're doing beta testing, or you have a product launch coming up and you need to do a beta test or some variation of beta test, whether it's dog fooding or something like that. But we have a lot of resources. So check those out. And now we'll leave it to Bree to cover any Q&A that we may have.
Sweet. Thank you, Chris. We do have a couple questions that came in. Just a reminder to those that are still with us, if you have any questions that come to mind, please do submit those in the Q&A and we'll be sure to address them. But to start out with, how can you recognize strong testers from the recruitment survey that you talked about? So you mentioned that open text question on, why would you be a good fit for the test, which I know in beta bound, we do ask that to every applicant. The question is, do you have any examples of some responses that you've seen in the past, maybe managing tests that have really stood out to you to recognize those testers that would be, really great?
Yeah, I did tell a story in the podcast, and I'm hard pressed to tell it again, but I was doing a test for a grill, and when we were looking for testers, we limited by their demographics, their technographics. So it's where they're at, their age, their salary, and then we have things like what products they use, for example, like whether or not they own a grill or what kind of grill they own, what other products they have in their house, and then we asked that open-ended question. And was super valuable when I was going through those responses, is that when I got a response, and the response was from a firefighter, and it was like, oh, cool, my grandfather was a firefighter, my great grandpa was a firefighter, and that's just something interesting to me that I gravitated towards. And they wrote this very elaborate response about why they'd be a good tester, why they'd be a good fit. And when you think about firefighters, they like grilling, they like that. They know about fire, they know about safety, they know those things. Like, oh man, it sounds like this would be an absolutely great fit for being a tester. And they found great feedback on the test, and they provided great feedback, and there was some issues that they really helped narrow down and solve, and it lended its weight into development as well, because it's far more believable when someone explains something that's going on, when it's from someone that is like a really good fit for the market and has that niche experience for someone like a firefighter. So kind of when you do those screener surveys, ask those open-ended questions, or that open-ended question about what makes you a good fit. So narrow down your results by the people that are supposed to be like a demographic and technographic fit, and then look at those responses, because you don't want to go through the endless open-ended questions of like thousands of people or hundreds of people that are applying to your test. Narrow down by first who should be a good fit, and then look through those responses to kind of narrow down who you should be selecting for your test.
Sweet. I'm going to go on camera. I feel like that's more appropriate, so you're not talking to the screen. Great, that was helpful. We do have another one as well. So you talked about some of the key characteristics to look out for when recruiting testers, and the importance of keeping them engaged. Mm-hmm. What would you recommend to program managers for engaging early on? So they're onboarded, and then now what? So you talked about like following up with testers, thanking them. What would you recommend during onboarding? Is there any like other resources that you can provide?
I've got a couple things. That's a good question. I really like keeping them informed about what to expect. So when you select a tester, after you let them know they've been selected and you have them sign their NDAs and all that fun stuff, providing guidelines on what you expect from them is really key. Providing guidelines for what you expect from really good people is even better. So here's what like everyone should do. And, this would be the stuff that's really helpful. So try that out. One other thing I recommend is giving them background on you. Like a lot of the reason why people are investing their time is because they want to engage with the company itself. So I love when people post like, hey, I'm Chris, and here's what I'm doing on the project and what I'm interested in learning about. And here's a little about me. And they can relate to me on a personal level. So I'm the person at the company, and I'm a human, and I'm listening to them, and I'm interested in their feedback. And that's just going to provide you that kind of wealth of information early on. And then you responding to feedback kind of keeps up with that along the way. And then put in that bookend at the end of thank you so much for your feedback, and giving them acknowledgement for what kind of impact they've had is kind of the roundabout engagement that you would have to do as an admin.
Sweet. Yeah, something comes to mind when I was running tests was like, this isn't always applicable, but letting the testers know some of the known issues that maybe you don't want them spending so much time on. Mm-hmm. That communication too just feels like you're kind of included with their dev team, and it's just all inclusive. Saves you time as well, not to have to keep reporting the same bugs over and over. Sweet. So another question, in your opinion, how would you prioritize development between the user's desires and what you know is important and impactful features, issues, improvement?
Mhm. Yeah, this is a fun question. One thing that I've done in the past is I've done this little practice. It's kind of fun. I would do an exercise internally. I'd say, hey, team, product team, UX team, what are the important features to us? What would we say are the most important features? And then we'd do like some kind of 5-point scale, have them rate it. And then we'd have testers do that same thing, right? Here, what are the most useful, impactful features for you? Right. So what are you interested in? What is important to you? And get that same rating. And then you can kind of come up with this little matrix. And what's really neat with that is something like CenterCode can actually apply that context and give you prioritization on the feedback that's coming through. So it's changing the way that you as an admin would see the feedback. Here's what's important to our company. Here's what's important to our testers. So when we are analyzing that data, we can actually take our assumptions with a grain of salt and say, here's what we thought were important. Here's what they thought was important. Now it's useful to kind of communicate if there's like a huge difference, because if they're truly like desiring something that you don't have, is that necessarily from their target market? Is there a disconnect between product market fit of the product that you built and the tester that you got? That's going to kind of be most people's first reaction to feedback of, no, my target market would never want that feature. Either they're wrong or you got the wrong tester. So there's things that I would put in place for that. That's I guess how I would kind of juggle that, what their desires are and what our intentions are or thoughts behind the product is. So I think there's a few things that you can use in there.
Very nice. Thank you.
And if you have follow-up questions to that, feel free you can reach out to me on email, chris@centercode.com. That seems like a fun conversation to have. I'm sure there's some context there that's a little more specific that I can probably be more effective at answering.
Yeah, definitely reach out. Sweet. Thanks for asking that. And then our final question, unless any others come in, do you have some examples of ways to stay engaged with testers after the testing period's over? So you kind of talked about up until and thanking them and things like that as you close out your tests, but how about after?
I've seen some great examples from customers. I haven't done this one personally, but when you have those people's emails, like you can have like a little micro newsletter of like, hey, here's the great things that we've been able to fix that came from you people. Like you guys found this, or you people found this feedback, and here's the things that we've been able to do. Inviting them into new projects is always fun too. So if you know that they've participated in a project, so that's one way to kind of keep up with them and move them through to the next stage. Those are probably the easiest things. I like giving swag out to people. I think if they're participating in the test and that's like one lasting impression, like they're part of the beta team, that's always a fun way to leave a lasting impression to somebody.
Yeah, that's a good one. Sweet. Well, I think that's it for questions. I don't see any more that came in. So thank you for answering those. I think now's just a good time to close out the session. Thanks again, Chris, for the presentation. Appreciate that. As a reminder, again, to everyone, we'll be sending out the recording to all of you. I'll also include the link to that ebook and the slide deck from today, so you guys have that on hand. Other than that, just have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.